Record. Welcome back to the Context Coaching Podcast. We're joined today by Sacramento Bee Coach of the Year, head basketball coach, math teacher at Natomas High School, Brian McKenzie. Coach, thanks for jumping on and responding to my random out of the blue message to you.
Definitely appreciate it. It's good to be here. Love what you're doing, man. Definitely appreciate it.
All right, well, let's dive in. Take us through your background as a coach, as an athlete. Tell us the journey, the story. How did you end up in Natomas, California, coaching an extremely successful team this year? And how did we get to that point?
The journey, I guess, obviously it does start as an athlete. I played grassroots starting in ninth grade. I guess that's a pretty late start in the grand scheme of things. But ninth grade, I couldn't dribble, couldn't shoot, but whatever it was, I fell in love with the game of basketball. Was fortunate enough to, start as a freshman on a freshman program. And it was simply because I could go rebound. So that was the starting point for me. And looking back, it was a lot of time, a lot of sweat, a lot of investment, early mornings, late nights, wherever I could find the ball in a hoop, I was there from that freshman year going into sophomore year. And luckily got a chance to be coached by Terrence Mullen. It was Chris Mullen's younger brother. And in that year, I was also able to get some individual work with Chris Mullen. And that just elevated my game to another level. So imagine playing freshman, maybe scoring 2 points all year, and to now as a sophomore averaging about 26 to 30 points a game. So it was a huge jump. New York is a little different. So the Catholic League specifically back then is one of the top leagues, top high school leagues in the country. We played against Rice, Christ the King, St. Ray's. If you guys aren't familiar with that, you look them up. They're in the top rankings consistently. They send guys D1 consistently. So we play JV as a sophomore, and we have the same scenario that I think is missing out here, but is great for what it is for varsity. But JV has playoffs as well. So we won the state for JV. And that was a major catalyst going into the next year to play varsity as a junior. Was able to start, played with some high-level guys. My point guard at the time, my junior year, was Levance Fields. He played at Pittsburgh. Top recruit. So I got got to see a lot of things firsthand with him. And we ended up having a subpar season in the grand scheme of things. We had 2 6'8" guys that got kicked out. Unfortunately, they just couldn't hack it. But we had a team that was supposed to be nationally ranked, and when we finally, came to grips with it, it just became a selfish kind of show. Like, whoever gets the ball, you go, you score, whatever the case may be. And that wasn't my game at all. So, and it took some time, but with a 500 record, I think just above a 500 record, we finally, bought into what Coach Alisi, my varsity coach was Jack Alisi, legendary coach out of New York and Brooklyn. We finally bought in, and we ended up winning the Catholic State Championship. We ended up winning the city championship, and then we were runner-up for the entire state. We played that year. I think we played Niagara, who had Paul Harris, Johnny Flynn, a couple other high-level guys. So that was eye-opening for me, seeing all those guys and finally understanding and embracing what the next level really was. So it was a great beginning to the game, and was able to then become a McDonald All-American nominee and Player of the Year nominee, runner-up, and all those kind of things. So it propelled me into a Division I scholarship at Providence College. And there I played all 4 years, was a captain for 2, played in the NIT twice, missed out on the NCAAs, but, that was just one of my underlying goals. So, I took the game for what it was. It was able to grant me some amazing things. I was able to play overseas for 5 years, got to see the world. Played against a lot of high level talent, got to work out in a lot of NBA gyms and with a lot of NBA guys that some of the younger guys and the guys that I coach are like, nah, you didn't play against him. Yeah, yeah. So definitely was able to take that, and then that passion for the game. I just never felt I was finished, even after playing. So I got into coaching first by training, working with kids, and then started my own program in New York. It was a bowler size elite. So I had a bunch of, you know, fifth and sixth graders who essentially just needed something to do. And I turned that into a small AAU program, which then turned into about 4 teams. And then now, as I look back, I have a bunch of kids that are still playing, few playing D3, couple playing D2, and then my last crop was probably the best group that we've had. I got a kid, Spencer Mahoney. He played at Washington. Another kid, Tyler Johnson, that played with us at the time. He's at Louisville. So, had a lot of success with that, and then transitioned it into being an assistant coach on the high school level at my high school. So we were able to, help cultivate some talent there. A couple guys still playing to this day. I think Michael Graham, he just transferred out of LMU. Nick Folk is playing D2 in Texas, I believe. And then another kid that I was able to work with right before COVID was Sean Fulcher, who's actually at Buffalo. So once that kind of, the success kept brewing and kept brewing, I was lucky enough to get an assistant coaching job at a D3 school in New York, Baruch College. So John Alisi was the head coach he's still the head coach now, but he was the head coach. He went to my high school as well, so we had that connection. And I learned so much just being an assistant with him. He runs that D3 top notch, and it was really eye-opening. So being able to recruit, being able to scout, running practices, cultivating newer and even better workouts and stuff like that, it was great. So I took those 3 years and was getting ready to just propel out of D3 into my network of obviously higher level D1, D2 guys and stuff. And COVID hit. So, took a back seat, and then obviously the family became priority. Both my boys are now growing, and the wife's happy. We moved, and that's when we moved right there during COVID. So, I took the hit, started from square one with at PS7, was coaching the middle school teams there, the boys and girls, and then transitioned into helping out Sac High, where McCall Woolman was the head coach at first. Um, and then the next year, Matt Johnson was the head, got the job, and we took what we kind of built on the year before and just turned it up a notch in one section. So that year, I also coached JV with Sac High, and we won the league as well. So, kind of just brought all the knowledge I have and experience I have from the East Coast and with the game, and just kept building and building and building. And then the opportunity came at Natomas. Always felt like, behind the scenes, or that the next idea or the scout that I've done was always, a contributor, and however you want to look at it, to building or winning. And but I felt like it was time. It was time to bet on myself. So the opportunity came. The Thomas coach stepped down. I got a call, said, you heard you might be interested in head coaching from the principal, Marcel Baker. And I said, yeah, I'll take a look. Let's meet. What's your vision? What do you think? And when he liked what I had to say, and I kind of felt that we were aligned, it made sense. It made sense for me. And so when I got the job in May, my initial action was like, I'm gonna be on campus. I need to be on campus, so I'm gonna sub. He's like, oh, that's great. The opening happened again in the math department. I said, it's funny. I do have experience teaching math, but California credentials and all that stuff. So he's like, no, you get a year as long as you're enrolled. So I'm enrolled in trying to get that credential. And he was like, you're good to go for the year. And then from there, it was just got my keys in May. And the gym's been open ever since, with workouts, with, film, with just open runs, with pickup, with just shoot arounds, and just slowly trying to build a culture. Slowly trying to build a culture. And then that slow build turned into, one or two extra transfers at the beginning of the school year. A lot more like eyes on the program over the summer, because we started traveling a little more, especially in June, getting out more into these different tournaments. And then the buy-in happened, I want to say, end of December, where they, it's where we played a preseason, a solid preseason, very solid preseason. I made sure to tweak the schedule to make sure we had some heavy hitters. I added Sac High. Made sure we had Rockland on there, and just wanted to, give them that experience, that high level experience for what Sacramento's offering. And we accepted all those challenges. We played Intercom as well. We took our hits, and then once December hit and we were getting ready to start league, it clicked. And then, we went through won league, got to the playoffs, got to section, and a couple more shots made and would have been a section champion, So, but it was great though, because it was obviously that first year, and it's just, I always talk about it with the kids. The basketball gods are going to reward your hard work, and what the basketball gods reward you for, they also will penalize you for when you don't do the right things. And obviously in the first year, you're going to have your ups and downs. So we pushed through a lot of stuff, and the run to state was looking like that was the the reward for the hard work. But to lose at a buzzer beater 3, it's still a lot of building left to do. So that's the story, that's the journey. And here I am now, getting ready to finish this school year. It was a absolute shock and very humbling, but appreciated experience to be coach of the year. And I'm just looking forward to getting these kids as much exposure and a quality, but continually building the quality of the program.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, such a great story and lots of connective tissue there, right? You're back coaching at your alma mater. Seems like your assistant journey is got to be related to your head coach, right? The other Elise, right? So you got all this network and how the ligature ties together as you move around, right? And even in Sacramento when you land, and another East Coaster you're working for in theory, right? And then local guy that grew up at Sac High, and then you land in Natomas, which has always been kind of a similar spot. So excited that you got to have that opportunity. But now here's what I really want to know: what did you need to figure out when you took over as the head coach? Right, you had an opportunity to be mentored by some great leaders, to be in the in the foxhole doing some things, doing some prep work. And then, I'm ready. It's time to spread my wings and take on this challenge. And then, you're the head coach. And then all of a sudden, I got this. But then, no, you don't. Talk a little bit about some of the things you had to figure out, and you realized right away, like, oh, okay, yep, I need to be responsible for this now.
Yeah. I'd say the first thing was the idea of playing at the next level. So a lot of the kids that I work with, and that vision of what the game can do for you, it was pretty much either you love the game and you want to get to that highest level possible, or you love the game and you just want to just want to play to play, even if it's JUCO or whatever the case may be. So that was the first challenge, because I came in and I spoke to the seniors that were there, the team, the guys that were returning from the team, and I was like, "Hey, you guys, you interested in playing next level?" And all of them said no. So I was shocked. I was like, "So you just happy to play high school basketball? Okay, that's different. I'm not what I'm used to." But like you said, that was the first smack, and I was just like, all right, so I got to cultivate a deeper love for the game. So that's where having all those open runs, having all the shoot arounds and stuff, just letting them be in the gym. That's the first thing. Second thing, academics. So I pulled the transcripts of the first that obviously the returners at the end of May, and I had one kid. He was a senior, 4.0 student, great kid. Shot him out, Achilles Terrell, 4.0 student. So I was like, oh, okay, it was a great start. He's about 6'4". Maybe he could go to community college if I really push and help. So that's where I kind of got excited, and then I looked at the other. And I was like, oh, 1.2, 1.3. And it's just like, all right. All right. So here's the real challenge. Will they be eligible? Okay. So even in the summer, I cultivated some form of study halls for the guys who had summer school, and those who didn't, I would put together peer tutoring or whatever it was that we could try just get that idea of being a student athlete. So not only building the love for the game, but obviously the understanding of any kind of recreational activity as a student, as a high school student, as a middle school, as an elementary, even as a collegiate athlete. You have to have that student component, and you have to have it down pat. So those were the challenges early, and to this day, just building a culture to make sure those are staples. It doesn't happen overnight. And so I was lucky to get the support that I did, and the buy-in that I did in just a year. And now it's just time to double down on it.
Talk a little bit about the inadvertent or unintentional success. And by that word, I just mean kind of uplifting the group as a whole that evolved based on you just having the gym open and somewhere for kids to go, especially in like a city setting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where, I'm in suburbia these days, but, where you're located, right? Sometimes kids just need a place to be. And then that ultimately helps them figure out, oh, this is maybe something I want to do, right? Talk a little bit about some of those unintended consequences or benefits, unintended benefits that just came out of you decide, you know what, I'm just going to post up in the gym and make this a place where people want to be.
No, that's exactly what happened. And what happened for me. So I understood the value of it. And it was even harder for me because I lived an hour plus away from the school. Here you have to be in the district essentially to go here. So a lot of them can walk. So just having that gym open, the first couple of weeks was literally only like 7 guys, and the more that everyone started seeing, oh, where you been in the gym? Okay, all right, couple more will trickle in. Couple more trickle in, to the point where the guys who stayed on as my JV coaches, they didn't have to make any cuts last year. They just had to try out. Whoever showed up, that was enough. It was just enough. This is what we're rolling with. And the difference is, like you said, just being able to be in the gym, wanting to be a part of something, was where this year we had so many kids in the gym. They were like, all right, now this is different. Even when we tried to, do our little fundraiser, vertical, they came in, same guy, obviously, same account. I just tried to build on it. He came in, he's like, Coach, what are you doing? It's like 3 times the kids from last year. So to your point, that it's an absolute benefit. It's an absolute benefit. And in this setting, having, community centers and so on and so forth is crucial. So when you don't necessarily have those opportunities or lifelines, to just have your high school available after school is huge. And honestly, this year, just having that group, it's a rough neighborhood. Just having that open haven, that safe haven, it was a lifesaver for some of these kids.
Yeah, and I would imagine from that and being around other similarly motivated kids, those academic challenges you faced early didn't go away, but became a little bit easier to navigate and provide support with, because ultimately you want to be part of something and here's the price of admission, right?
Mm-hmm.
Talk a little bit about what other things just developed organically that helped you throughout the season and planted some seeds that ultimately will come to fruition over the next couple of years?
I'll say the first thing is accountability. Um, Especially when you have a bunch like we had a good group that obviously played varsity the year before. Some of them played varsity since they were freshmen, so they felt like things don't need to change, and that's understandable. So just setting a hard line with that and getting them to buy in and understand, like, I'm not wavering. If you think that whatever worked last year is what is happening, no, it's not. So if you don't want to be here, if you don't think you can do this, here's the door. And that was the hard line. And I stayed that way pretty much the entire year. But I will say, in terms of leadership, the my way or highway doesn't always work with adolescents. So I was able to bend, but I made sure I picked the when to bend. But initially, it was, here we are. We're gonna go to Monterey Trail. We're playing in this tournament. Everyone's like, oh wait, we're playing Monterey Trail. Yeah, I'm coming. But you gotta have a 2.0. So that first tournament, everyone played. Once I got the grades back, and I realized, oh, you didn't have a 2.0. You don't. All right, well then you're not coming to Christian Brothers, or you're not coming to Capital Christian. Sorry, I know you had fun. You that was great. We got new jerseys, practice whatever. Film. The kids love the highlights, so you get the film for them, and they're like, oh yeah, this is great. And when they realized that there was so much happening and so many plans happening, when you start talking about, oh, we're going to play this team and I'm scheduling this team, they kind of start salivating, and they're like, oh, I want to play, regardless of who I'm playing for. I want to play. So that was the give, right? They had no choice, essentially, because of everyone else buying in. So that it didn't change 100% right away, or 100% at all, but it at least forced everyone to meet at that minimum bar, which was great. And obviously, we didn't have any major injuries or anybody fail off, so that was a major contributor to the success we had.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, right, there's going to be a standard, and the kids got to meet that or they can't play. And your leadership challenge then becomes, okay, how do I elevate that standard, right? How do I make sure that what the state mandates or what the district mandates is the baseline, but that's not what we're going to roll with here, right? And then, like you said, how do you decide when to flex, right? How do you embrace guidelines versus things that are hard and fast so that you can meet the kids where they are? And I appreciate that you shared that. Let me ask this. What would you say has had the largest ripple effect on creating your culture? Meaning something that maybe you brought with you from your own time as a player, or that you picked up along the way with one of these other coaches, that if you were to pick up and leave and go somewhere else, like, it's coming with you. And I don't want like the ethereal, culture and team building, but it's like, no, what's something that's specific that someone can adopt? So for example, like, we hug before practice and after practice and before games and after games, specific, especially with my boys teams, because like, we're not taught to emote as males, right? So it's like, how do we break down those barriers? And I switched over to the girls this year, and I was a little bit leery to do it just based on some boundaries and whatnot. And then when we finally started doing it, I'm like, you know what? This is something we've always done. I feel like there's something missing. We started doing it, and it was like, boom, culture shift immediately. So what do you have to offer the greater coaching community that are some like nuggets that are maybe they're specific to you, maybe they're not, but you've seen them transform entire groups?
The first one I'd say is timing. Scheduling practice in the early morning is always going to weed out those who are not fully committed. And I say those because it's not just the kid, it's the family as well. And I know a lot of people are now tapping into Dawn Staley and to Coach Hurley about how they recruit the kids a lot by seeing the parents. For me, I knew as a player in high school, I knew my dedication level was gonna be at the highest of highs when my mom or my dad would see me wake up at 4 a.m. to get to school to do a 6 a.m. workout. So they saw it. They knew I was taking the bus and the train to get there. So it made them invest more. So like, it's all right, I'll drop you at least once or twice, you know, to get you to school. So for me, early morning practices. That's the first thing. Second thing I did was we prayed before and after every game. All right. And you know, you think about the boundary of what the religion and who celebrates and who, I mean, to not celebrate, who worships what and so on and so forth. It was very generic. One of my players, he would pray in Spanish. And, you know, another player would just in English, but we prayed before every game and after every game. And it brought us together. So that first game we played Rio Linda, I said the prayer. And everyone's, you know, the kids are listening. They're like, oh, okay, coach. But then that next game, end the game, I said, so and so, your turn, you pray. You know, they're kids, all the giggling, the stuttering, the so on and so, and every game, someone new. And we finally locked into having, you know, two guys really do it, but it was a buy-in to the point where they're like, coach, we got to make sure we pray. We got to pray. So those two things are just the two of the small nuggets that I bring with me, and I'm you know, however you do it, however you can find a way to get them to buy in without praying or something other than praying, whatever it is. If it's the hugging, like you said, so be it. But yeah, those are my two nuggets.
All right, I'm going to ask a controversial question here, and I'm curious what your answer will be. Is how do you navigate uh, hmm, how do I say this appropriately? The politics of that in regards to what's allowed in public school systems, right? Is it more of a gratitude offering to the universe, right? So that you are not stepping over any perceived boundaries. Like, talk a little bit about that for people that may be a little bit more reticent based on where they're located, how that may or may not be received, be it super secular or super religious. But like, just talk a little bit about that so that, you know, people can maybe adopt something similar, but also understanding the boundaries that come with that.
So basketball God.
Ah,
So I that's how I started it. I said, you know, we want to thank the basketball gods for making sure we have a safe game, that we stay together, we stay positive, everyone's healthy, you know, one of those. And that's how we navigate it. And that's how we did it all year. We prayed to the basketball gods.
there you have it, people. There's your opportunity to bring some sort of practice into your space and avoid some of the shrapnel that may come with that. I appreciate that, Coach. All right, let's go here. What have you learned watching other teams? And by that, in a perfect world, you will be recounting some things that you've learned from watching non-basketball teams. But at the same time, based on your backstory, I don't know how diverse your sport discipline background is and how much you watch right now, but I'm real bullish on multi-sport athletes. And the whole point of this is being not a basketball podcast, but a coaching podcast in general. I feel like often we're in the trap and having tunnel vision. So if you have something great, if you don't, talk a little bit about what you've gotten from your mentors over the years.
Um, the truth is, I mean, I've coached soccer, I've coached baseball. So I do have some experience outside of the realm of basketball, but conditioning, I think conditioning is the end all be all of the success you're able to have in that sport. The more conditioned you are physically, the more conditioned you become mentally, the more you can add to your individual game, the more you add to the team game. For me, it all boils down to the conditioning, and that's the part that a lot of the kids, you know, frown upon. Oh, we got to run, or we got to do so and so, and you know, just being able to mix it up, adding different sports. So for me, I like to do ball taps, not only with your hands, but on the ball, you know, because you got to be nimble, you got to be quick. So that's a soccer drill essentially, you know, and also just being able to match some of the actual sport movements to the conditioning. So we'll do defensive slides with the ball where we're rolling it on with your fingertips and so on and so forth, just to switch the body mechanics up, but it's still conditioning, you know. So for me, I'd say the conditioning's huge. And if you look at any other high level sport for where high level athlete for whatever sport they're playing, they are in shape to another level.
All right, so let me ask you this, because I'm going to push back on you on that a little bit, because you're there, and I want you to dive in exactly what you mean by this, and I'm over here where like I refuse to run my kids. Like they're there to play basketball, so we're going to train while we're playing basketball, and we're going to get in shape. Talk a little bit about how you hack that, right? Meaning you're not putting them on the line and running them like it's Coach Carter, right? But at the same time, it's like I've figured out how to hack this conditioning piece while growing as basketball players or athletes or soccer players or whatever it is.
So through Plyo specifically. And it's funny you say Coach Carter, because I like, you know what I like this year? We were able to take some old jerseys that we found, and instead of like running and pounding the pavement, you know, we would put them at the bottom of our sneakers, and then we would, you know, bear crawl up and down the court. So little, you know, so I was able to tweak it that way, because I'm 100% in the middle of, we got to run, but we don't want to overrun as well. So we still got to find ways to condition. So just being creative that way. I know for me, we do a lot of drills where 3-man, we're just body weight lifting each other down the court, back and forth. So it's unique to be able to just put that together, but it's something I've done even working with my middle school kids. It's not all about running. Everyone old school for sure, get on the line and run. I know I ran miles, but being able to find that happy medium where they are being conditioned, but you're not over pounding or just, like you said, Coach Cartering the situation.
No doubt. You owe me 1,500 push-ups and 500 suicides. All right, so let's go here. What would you say was the most eye-opening moment you had, either as a coach or as a leader, or hell, as a learner, this year in your experience as a head coach, right? You moved over 18 inches. You're no longer a recommending body. You're now a decision maker. Tell me a story of something that you didn't expect, that was a really good learning moment that allowed you to grow and continue on that journey of expanding your leadership abilities.
I think the identity you bring as a coach definitely becomes the identity of your team. So for me, realizing how trusting, how confident, how patient I was in my players, I noticed it in a significant difference. One of the first games that we lost, it was a 1-point loss to Union Mine. And I look back at the film and I look at my body language on the sidelines, and you could tell it, you know, very intense, very demanding, but essentially the yelling was kind of taken away from the players. And then when you fast forward to playing Union Mine again in the in sections to get to the section championship, it was a level of confidence, a level of poise, and that patience that I realized from the sideline to the court was huge.
And what changed? I mean, that's an experienced shift, not necessarily a new to that role shift, right? Because we think we can control everything while we're younger. And by younger, I'm not talking about age, but really like being in charge for the first time. It's like you're trying to micromanage things and, you know, getting to the point where you just stand and it's like, oh, the hay's in the barn at this point. Like the kids got to play, right? What was the click for you on that? I mean, it couldn't have just been one game, right? I mean, this had to be something of an evolution over the last few years of coaching.
Yeah. I mean, obviously just being on the sidelines from whether it's AAU or JV, essentially that demand is always going to be the same. Even as an assistant coach, you're going to scream or talk to the refs or say something and try to echo whatever the coach you think the coach wants to hear. But like you said, it was growth. It was from Rockland to Union Mine to Marysville to it was a build of not just my confidence, but obviously a build of the confidence in the kids. So the more that they bought in, the more that they showed up to 6 a.m., the more that they were receptive to, all right, you should make sure when you come off the screen, 1-2, as opposed to jumping off into a jump stop. And seeing the results in the games, whether we won or lost, it's like, okay, yeah, we lost to Rockland by 11 or 12, whatever. I think it was 12, but it was a 3-point game with 2 minutes to go. So when we go back and watch film and they kind of see that, they're like, hold on, 3-point game, 2 minutes to go. Rockland's a top 4, top 3 team in the region right now. Something's working. So like you said, it's not just the one game, but you start with those early games, and if you can find success even in those losses, which is one of the hugest things, the growth becomes incremental. So once we really bought into everyone's role, they became stars in their roles. I think that's when you can see the calm, and lucky for me, I only got one tech this year. I got my first tech, so I literally, the ref always tells you, we can talk. And if you have a question, I'll answer. That's classic ref talk. So I'm at the sideline, I'm at the baseline, and I'm saying, what did he do, ref? What did he do? But, very loud. So he's technical. I said, ref, you said I could ask you a question. So, it's just understanding that dynamic. And I guess getting that first tech, it kind of, was eye-opening at being on the sideline that way and the magnitude of the difference in these high school games. So yeah, it all cultivated and came together. But it really was the kids though. At the end of the day, it was the kids. To be able for them to buy in the way they did, it was them.
For the listeners out there, you can ask as many questions as you want, but tone matters. Timing matters. You said it earlier, timing, right? The all-time greatest thing that anyone's ever offered me is in your conversations with officials, this question: what did you see there? And then they inform you, and you can say, okay, I appreciate that. And you move on, which goes a lot further than any other tactic that you may have.
Oh yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. What did he do from the baseline? All good. So let me ask this. What have you most recently changed your mind on? Meaning, like, we go through life and we have opinions and we have experiences that shape those opinions. And, often it's, okay, this is how we're going to operate. But then the landscape changes and you can either die on that hill or you can shift with the time and cling to, unchanging principles, right? But modify your procedures, to quote Jason Wells. What's something you've most recently changed your mind on that you used to be dug in over here and now you're over here and here's why? And someone might be like, yo, that's hypocritical. You used to say this. It's like, no, I've changed my mind.
Um, I don't think enough time's passed for me to want to change anything yet.
It doesn't have to be basketball related. It can be about anything where you are growth mindset and you're working on yourself as an individual, that you've pivoted on something. And the whole reason, coach, is like, we're asking kids to have buy-in, right? We're asking kids to grow. And often that comes from us modeling that, right? And showing them that, like, hey, I'm growing too.
Then you know what? Podcasts. I honestly now embrace them, not only to do them, but to listen to them, especially coaching podcasts. Um, I'm tuned in a lot more to just hearing the different stories, the mindsets, and the mental tactics. So even with just Netflix, like watching, some documentaries and stuff, it's at one point it's just always been, all right, let's roll the balls out, the AAU mindset. But after this year, I think that's the biggest change. So man, my wife can attest, just being at home even after a game, dissecting film in a high school game. She's like, you guys won. What are you watching? Or watching the next game of the opponent. And it's just like, it's never ending. And it's true, because the great part about that is she actually just came home and bought me a book. I haven't been able to grab it yet, but it was a coaching mindset book. I'll recommend it when I get a chance. I'm actually going to look for the picture in the next couple seconds, but just that part, the elevation and the growth, period. Just having that growth mindset of, all right, if you're really into coaching, which, it kind of pushed my button this year and kind of like lit the fire again. Obviously, the plan for me was back then, to do the D3 thing and then go to the D1 level and so on and so forth. But it kind of quelled. And now that I'm back in the fire, it kind of lit that ignition. So that's
Yeah,
it.
no, I love that. And I think what I'm also curious about based on that is you were, teaching some middle school, you wanted to be on campus, so you jumped in the classroom subbing. Then it was like, okay, there's a math job. Let me get in here and teach math, right? I'm sure there was as much, if not more time spent on, hell, how do I teach this? Right. Where it's not my area of expertise, but I gotta act as if, right? So I can answer questions. Like, what did you learn teaching math that directly translated to the court? Meaning you solved a problem for, educating a kid who maybe struggled in that you were like, yo, this will work over here as well. And that's the biggest thing I'm interested in. Like you said, tactics, right? Like what can you do that you're not traditionally thinking about that we can bring to the front of mind for people?
So with teaching, the repetition, right, is huge. So being able to go over a topic with confidence, right? So whatever is going to be taught, just like I just said, that other part of obviously being a coach and watching film is being a teacher and having to grade or having to put a lesson plan together, which I was fine doing on the middle school level. But obviously with the high school level, they know a little more. You have to be a little bit more detailed. So the great part was embracing the flaws and, learning and navigating sometimes on the fly. And I would say one of the best tricks that I was able to pull from my principal, who was the math head of the math department as well. Go figure. But what I was able to pull from him is, sometimes empowering the students to teach themselves, which will then have them teach each other, was huge. So giving them the same tools that I would use to put things together, right, and have them kind of put it together their way, and that was huge. When I saw it work, I was like, whoa, this kind of makes life a little easier. But how is it sustainable? So I had to put that was the thing. If it worked once, will it work again? Just like running a play. You run it once, will it work again if the team scouts it or whatever the case may be? But it did, and it helped me grow, because I would learn from them as well. I would learn from them, and it would obviously help jog my memory for a lot of the stuff that I did obviously 15 to 20 years ago, as opposed to just watching a video or whatever the case may be. They would take the same information from that textbook, from the material, and light a light under me. So that was I would say one of the best tactics, not only just coaching, just life wise.
How have you tapped into the network now that you're in Sacramento from a coaching standpoint? And by that, I mean, having spent a ton of time up there and cut my teeth up there, I'm still dialed in to that group. And if you go through the episodes, you'll see a bunch of Sacramento people on there, right? But it's like, how have you either started to, you want to, or how are you leveraging that network to continue to grow yourself as a coach, right? And lean on some of the, the long time guys that have been there and won state championships and done the things you're trying to do. Have you tapped into that at all? Can you share a few stories about, maybe some interactions you've had that have been helpful and you're looking to grow more?
Yeah, I can. Just want to share that it's Gridiron Genius by Michael Lombardi. That's the book. But in terms of the networking, the first thing I did when I moved out here, was tap into the social media aspect, see who's doing what and who's, generating a good buzz. Obviously, in this generation, that's the easiest thing to do. So when I was able to figure that out, once we moved, I met the guy. His name's Ryan Sipkins. He put
Sidekicks, Aggies,
Sipkins.
maybe UC
Yeah,
Davis.
yeah. Sipkins, yeah. At 100%. He's supposed to be in the Hall of Fame now, huh? Top notch shooter.
Local SAC guy, Franklin High School, but more importantly, UC Davis Aggies.
So I tapped in with him. Went to go watch his workouts. Went to watch him coach. And he obviously had a lot of high level guys like Phil Handy that he worked with. So I tapped in with him first, and a lot of what he does was very, very similar to what I was doing in New York. So I love to see it. And then just taking a couple of nuggets from him and obviously his network and being in his backyard. He gets guys from overseas. He has Phil Handy on call. So it was a lot of high level stuff that I was like impressed by. So that was one of the first connections I made. And then the coaches up at Sac High, all of the guys from McCall to Matt to Sid to Mario, all of those guys essentially kind of, little brothered me, and gave me some tips. So that first year was the core of who I networked with. And then I was fortunate enough to coach on West Coast Elite. So they're one of the top-notch UA teams in the West Coast, and that's where I met Bryce and Teven from Modesto Christian. I met a bunch of the LA coaches from Harvard Westlake and so on and so forth, and obviously Ryan Silver, who's one of the biggest directors in the AAU game. So that kind of happened organically. It wasn't forced, just from doing my research and being able to put my mind in that basketball space. I was able to network really quick, really early, and then now as I grow, I talk to Manfredi, and finally on the mailing list for all the schools in Northern California and Southern California. So that's huge. But another guy that I talk to consistent every once in a while, at least every other week, is Stephen Taylor at Rockland. Great guy. We play them again this year at their place. So just being able to network is something that I think is important in the game, and obviously just having those relationships and building relationships. That's it's your network is essentially your net worth. So
Bingo. And that's how the show started. Tapping into the network, getting on the horn, interviewing people, sharing it with other people. And I love that you're reaching out and creating those connections. Let me ask this last question because I philosophically have a problem with what the youth sports industrial complex is doing to athletics. And so you mentioned that you're coaching some AAU, you're tied into that nonsense and that monster. And how do you reconcile that with being an education-based coach, right? A school coach. And by reconcile, I mean, obviously they both offer certain things. But I think what I have seen over the last few years, and this is not just in basketball, this is in general, that the messaging kids and families are getting mostly from their club coaches. I don't think it's ill-intended. Let me just say that for the record. But the impact it is having is, I feel like it's creating a group, a generation, so to speak, of misinformed families in regards to the reality of collegiate athletics, right? The reality of what athletics are for, right? Which is, to teach you how to lead, to follow, to be part of something bigger than yourself, right? You played at a high level, and those principles are consistent, right? But I think the way that the landscape has shifted and changed, like how do you navigate that, right? And how do you tune out the outside noise to try to really help kids and families be informed with the facts and not the perceptions of what they're hearing, from Jimmy's mom that's sitting next to them, that heard from Mikey's mom, that, heard from the neighbor down the street, that this is how you do X.
That question is loaded. It is loaded.
Yes, it is. And so you can answer it however you want, but I'm very curious because it is a very delicate dance.
Mm-hmm. No, so I'll say, firstly, being a school-based coach now, it definitely has opened my eyes, and I am no longer coaching AAU. I'm affiliated just off of either the kids that I have or that I've worked with. This past weekend, I was in Oakland just to do a favor for a friend with an AAU program. But my focus is school, and I would say the primary reason is not only for grades and not only collegiately. It's not only to get them to the next level in whatever sport they're playing, but it's to make sure that we're raising and cultivating citizens of tomorrow, right? And I say that because you can have a 1.5 or whatever it is at school, and your AAU coach is still going to play you, so that's the disconnect. And I think the huge part about that is now families are realizing how much value is being put into the grassroots sports, whether it's baseball, you get drafted in high school, whether it's soccer. Now the USA has one of the top ranked soccer players in for his age. I think he's about what, 15. And then even bigger, the bigger to add to that is the NIL, so it's a huge monster. It's creating even more monsters in that sense, where families are oblivious to the actual, like you said, the root of what sports are for. And, when you look at the Olympics and why the Olympics were created and so on and so forth, it's not the same. Even Kyrie just said it, where he misses the fact that you had to try out. No longer are you trying out. You're just invited and you're in. And that's the problem. So it sucks. You think about, even like, specifically where I am, I'm a basketball coach. You think about it, where back in the day, if you had an AAU program, it was one AAU program and it was the best of the best in that area. No longer is that the case. If you don't make the team, oh, Dad, I didn't make the team, I still want to play. All right, come on, Bobby. You got any other friends that want to play? I got you. And now we have another AAU team. We have another AAU team. And I get it. We're living in that time where equity is the biggest focus and so on and so forth. But it also is creating a lot more, and I hate to say the word, a-holes. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But it's true. Kids are just a lot more spoiled because of it. And I think as a school-based coach, it's my priority to help navigate and humble that. And I do it not only with the kids. I honestly do my check-ins with parents. I have parents who've helped me coach this year. And I hold them accountable just as much as I do the kids, in terms of like understanding when there's a problem, how to navigate that problem, whether it's grades, whether it's behavior, whatever. One of the biggest things I made sure to try to instill was communication. So if kids are late and they're not communicating and the parents aren't communicating, that's a problem. So hopefully it changes.
Well, and I think two things on what you just said. Number one, like, I really don't have a problem if kids want to go out and play and get better, and there's a vehicle for doing that, right? So, hey, you didn't make this team, we want to start our own and go play. Like, cool. It's when the snake oil gets in there and, hey, you come do this, this is going to happen. It's like, no, like, stop. It's a ball fake. Like, cut it out. Like, it's a vehicle to get better, like, great. But like all the noise, that's the stuff that we can't control. And that's what ultimately I think pollutes the environment. And that's where I really struggle with it, right? And I think that's something that you're gonna have some fun navigating over the next few years. And then, on the other piece, it's like, okay, how do you, what you said, if you said I'm a basketball coach, and I'm going to challenge you a little bit to say, no, you coach basketball, right? And you do that as a vehicle to create and cultivate citizens of tomorrow, right? You're more than a basketball coach. That's your vehicle, right? You use that to help grow these young men. And I often think that when it's connected to education-based athletics, right, that's part of the mission, right? Versus when it's an outside entity, the sport almost becomes the driver, right? And the outcome versus all these other things you're trying to instill through that vehicle. And that's kind of where I struggle with it. It's not like it's this, by its nature, it's a bad thing. It's ultimately like, where's your focus and where's your energy? And what you said there on the last part, it was about communication, right? There's a generation that we probably grew up in that was like, yo, you're late, like you're dead to me. But it's ultimately like, no, like there are things that happen that sometimes get in the way. They're not intentionally trying to be late, but it's like, as long as they're communicating, like that's a life skill.
Right.
Right.
100.
And so I love that you brought that whole thing and tied it in a bow. So thanks for doing that. Coach, anybody wants to reach out, wants to check in or learn something, talk more shop, where can they find you?
I'll be right there at Natomas. I'm not doing much this summer, but making sure I cultivate the program, build the program. Currently working on the schedule for next year, currently working on creating finals for my students, currently helping, my two young athletes and scholars get better. I got my son, he's going to be doing a dual immersion program for school. So I'm diving into becoming multilingual as well. So just trying to completely better myself. And I'm open. My line is open to communication. The number hasn't changed since I was in middle school, and my email is the same as well. So,
well, spit out your email real quick and your social handles so people can jump on the train and follow. We'll keep the
yeah,
phone number offline. They can reach out for that.
Gotcha. It's Bmaculate1, BMACULATE1. That's on X, on Instagram. It's Coach Mac on Twitter. On TikTok, whatever. There's so many of them. But yeah, the main one I'm on Bmaculate1. And I literally very, very, very much a part of the cultivating of the Nighthawks MBB page as well.
Love that, Coach. Thanks for being on. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to get on wax here and talk some shop.
Definitely. I appreciate it, man. Look forward to seeing who's next and what happens next for these coming months.
No doubt. Well, we'll talk soon. Hopefully you can get down here to God's country at some point. I no longer come back to Sacramento. But if you get down this way, let me know.
All right. We'll be in touch. I appreciate it.